All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. To my regular listeners, you already know what's going down. You hit the play button, you know what to expect now. You know your life is going to be changed in some way, shape, form, or fashion. We are here to help you, whether it's just myself or it's a guy, somebody that I have on as a guest. We are here to help you simply get through the moment. That's what we are here to do in every episode that gets recorded on the show. However, in particular in this moment, we're here to help you get through the moment. So today, I could not be more excited about the guest I have on today, because if for you regular listeners, you do know this about me. You do know I teach at a school named the Center for Creative Education, and we actually have an art integrated curriculum where we use art to engage kids in learning. We use art to engage kids in math lessons, social studies lessons, science lessons, all these kinds of things. And today I have a guy named Patrick Williams who embodies all of that. I was listening to you earlier, Patrick, and I was just kind of reminded of the quote, every child is an artist. The challenge is how to remain an artist once the child grows up. And you have all of that in your background. Everything you're about embodies that quote. So all that being said, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm happy to be here, Aswan. Great to be here.
So let's take this back from the beginning, because there's a lot of your story that I truly resonate with. Having grown up I was growing up in the suburbs of Silver Spring, Maryland. However, being a Black kid in that situation, you don't see too many people who look like you around you.
Sure.
Having the name that was very unique to pronounce, there was always a lonely feeling. I remember times me just going out as a kid, playing football all by myself with no friends, anything like that. And you actually have a similar upbringing in terms of you use climbing trees as a way of escaping reality and, just being to yourself. And then all of a sudden those trees were cut down and you had to figure out ways of creatively, expressing yourselves and things like that. So I think the best way to start off is just going back to your background a little bit, what you learned growing up, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. Sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that I think so many of us have these challenges while growing up, but there's a part of it that you're hinting at that
Yes.
it's actually makes us stronger.
Come on,
And
man. I mean, we're not even 5 minutes in, and we are told you this is what we do on this show.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love your energy too. Yeah. So there was, there were all kinds of remarkable things in my life growing up out in the country. It was close enough to the city that I was going to a public school, but my older sisters, they went to a one-room schoolhouse. So that was just like 10 years before I was in grade school. So we had this both benefits of being out in the country and being close to the city.
Yeah.
And as I said in my TEDx talk, my dad, struggled with alcoholism, and that put all kinds of challenges into my life. But then he was also this incredible guy, right? When he wasn't drinking.
Yeah.
So there are all these pluses and minuses. And I learned how to, in some ways, focus on myself out in the woods, because there wasn't any distractions. Everything was safe. Everything was secure. I knew all the trees. I knew, a bunch of the animals, and I could really find out what I was thinking about and sort of what I was feeling.
Yeah.
And then when they bulldozed them all down, it was like.
Now, how old were you? How old were you when that happened?
I was 10.
Oh,
so it was like
what, fifth grade, fourth grade? So you're
fifth grade, I think.
You're developing your own personality at this point, and you like what you like, and then all of a sudden you start to see the way the world treats things that are very actually important to you, and they just bulldoze it like they were nothing.
Yeah, right. And they literally bulldozed them into these giant piles, poured thousands of gasoline on the piles, and just lit them on fire. It was just, I still can't comprehend it. When I see, we had a huge storm here. We called it you know what a hurricane is, but
Yeah.
we called it a hurricane because we had 100-mile-an-hour winds. And we're
Mhm.
in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
And it took out huge amounts of trees, just
Mhm.
uprooted them, big branches all over the place. We didn't have power for like 4 days. Some people just got their power and it was like 14 days, almost 2 weeks.
Mhm.
But that I'm trying to think of where I was going. I was going somewhere
Right.
as
Yeah,
well.
we're going back with because the thing that is difficult, and I want to say a challenging thing, especially if you take yourself back to your 10-year-old self, and all you listeners can go back to your 10-year-old self. Now, you start to develop your own friends, you start to develop your own personality and your own characteristics, the things that are just important to you. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. When you see the world, kind of the powers that be come in and bulldoze things that are so important to you, and then you grow up realizing, because you started to allude to this as you get further in your story, how much they kind of dismiss the importance of artwork, how much they dismiss
Absolutely.
the importance of creativity and teaching young people to think creatively to solve problems, that the school system now just becomes this monotonous thing where you start to have to do it, and they infuse no kind of enjoyment at all, to where now kids are going to school and it's like drudgery for them when it should
Right.
not be like that.
Should not be. Right.
Said that so many times on this show that the regular listeners are probably tired of hearing me say it, but I'm going to keep saying it until you guys get it. It should not be a situation where kids go to school and they look at it like it's prison. It should
Right.
not be something where they have to do it. It's something that they get to do. So, you're 10
Exactly.
years old, and I'll kind of bring you back on track with this question, though. You're 10 years old, this happens to you, and now you have to go through the school system. What was that experience like for you when, maybe you want to take an art class, or your art class isn't that important, or maybe your parents are like, look, focus on this math lesson. Talk us to a little bit about what was the school situation like for you growing up before you
Sure.
actually were able to move on.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Mhm.
I struggled in school
Mhm.
before that, and I think that was before 10. I was in the lowest reading groups, I was in the lowest math groups,
Mhm.
and I was more interested in being outside. I was more interested in drawing and all these other activities. I had really no concept of what school was about.
Right.
And and slowly, by about sixth grade is when something happened for me.
Uh-huh.
And right at the beginning of sixth grade, all of my friends were in a special after school program called Challenge. And they were taking field trips, and they were just like in 2 weeks time, they were doing all these cool things, and they were telling me about it. And I was like, I want to do that.
Mhm.
So I walk up to my teacher, during lunch, and I say, I want to be with my friends in that after school program called Challenge. And she was like, well, your grades aren't good enough. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, she was trying to be diplomatic. She
Right.
said, all these kids have really, really good grades. And that's why they were chosen to be in the special after school program. And I
Mhm.
was like, well, I wouldn't let up. I
Yeah.
just kept saying, I want to be in it.
Right.
And she was realizing that, I was focused on this.
Mhm.
And and I just kept asking. And she finally said, okay, you have to get to all your grades up to this level. And I said, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And she told me. And within like 3 weeks after that, I was in challenge class because I brought all my grades up because
Mhm.
she told me how to do it. I was completely unfocused
Mhm.
then on school. And school after that was way less challenging. I was more involved. I I then learned how to study and got a balance of grades. I wasn't really my my one of my sisters was super focused on getting straight A's. I think she got straight A's from kindergarten all the way through college, right? Just
Yeah.
focused on getting good grades. I was like, well, in
Mhm.
the classes I loved, I got good grades. And the ones I didn't,
Mhm.
less good. Nothing horrible, but it wasn't really my focus.
Mhm.
But all through that process, I was continuing to draw and teach myself to draw.
Mhm.
And in ninth grade, there was a an experimental class that our junior high did that they they had a special art class.
Mm-hmm.
Loved that. And then in high school, I taught myself how to paint. And then I took one art class in high school, and which was great. I could have taken more, but my focus was kind of on the sciences, and I was sort of going in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I was driving down to college to register in 1977, and I thought, well, is it going to be art or is it going to be physics? Is it going to be art or going to be physics? And when I got down there and was signing up for classes, I chose art, and which was, I think, the best decision. And then from high school, I made probably 25, 30 stretched canvases in high school, and they were like 30 by 40 inches. One of them was 6 feet by 2.5 feet. So I was focusing on something way bigger than just making some art.
Mm-hmm.
I knew by that time that I had something that was very unique, and I wanted to pursue it. And I've been doing that ever since. So the schooling was kind of rocky at first.
Right.
And in my time of being at school, we still had recess, like maybe 3 times a day. We still had art during the day in grade school, and in not so much in junior high, but so art was there. It was feeding me a bit, and that added to my ability to hang on to it and concentrate on it. And I love what you're involved with. It is a passion of mine, and it's actually the core of my first manuscript that I'm working on, that I've been working on for ages. But it's for educators. It's explaining why art is so important and how you can integrate it into all subject matters, that it relates easily. And I just love what you're doing. It's just so important for kids to have that experience of
it is important. And like I said, man, you just say the word, and I'll try to make sure I get your work, around and passed around to the school I'm at now, or delegated to the school I'm at now in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Because the way it works is we bring in a teaching artist, and every grade level has a teaching artist that comes in, and they work with us as educators to figure out what's going to be a great project for the kids to do.
I love that.
See that. So, for example, we had a lesson where we were teaching the kids about social studies and the judicial system and politics and things like that. So we had a teaching artist come in, and she had them do 2 assignments. One had draw an ocean that was clean, and then the other one was to draw an ocean that has a bunch of trash in it and all that kind of stuff. And then she basically told them, okay, if you were running the country, what kind of rules, what kind of laws would you set in place to keep people from throwing, and we have stuff like that, constantly creative, constantly, challenging that creative mindset. And that brings me to the next thing I wanted to ask you about, because most of the time, especially back when you went to college, and even now, I'm probably is the same way, is when you go to college, you get that question, how is your major going to make money? Are you gonna pick something, gonna be a business major, or are you gonna go and study art somewhere and then figure out how to make money and all that kind of stuff? So I'm sure that was a question that you had to ask, whether you had to ask yourself or people were pressuring you when it comes to, okay, how is this art thing gonna make money in the future? walk us through how you were able to go from that to now where you're able to do it full time, and TED Talks and doing the work you're doing now.
Sure. Well, that's sort of like a 8-hour conversation.
I'm telling you, it's important that people
Uh,
understand that, because the thing is, I hate that question, because it shows how the lack of creativity to people who are just in the college world to just make some money. But they don't realize business owners need to think creatively. I actually have a business coach now who tells us all the time, look, it's either you're going to be an artist or an entrepreneur, and there's ways of merging those two. There's ways of mixing the artist element and the entrepreneur element, but you have to really focus on what it is you want to do, and you really have to be creative. So I think it can be in a full swoop, but like I said, you can free to share your process a little bit in terms of how you're able to answer that one.
Yeah, wow, that's such a big big thing to cover.
Mhm.
I've gone through lots of different levels of the process. You know, when in high school, everything, everybody was kind of pushing all of us in the sciences to go into engineering. And back then, the University of Nebraska at Lincoln had this stupendous engineering department. They were pumping out lots of great, all kinds of engineers. And I was like, yeah, that ain't me. I can't
Right,
do it.
right.
There's no way. And and I just had, I knew my heart was fully in art.
Mhm.
And sadly, back then, and I think it continues, there really isn't a type of assistance, of nurturing or helping those kids who are passionate about art how to make a living and how to make a career, or how to make how to different kind of expand your horizons and be able to do a number of things connected to art,
Mhm.
like artist in residencies or visiting artist programs.
Right.
That for me came later in my I guess in my late 20s or late 30s, that I was starting to do lots of those programs. And in reality, the pay was super great compared to all the part-time jobs that I had. I
Right.
always had, you know, like 4 or 5 part-time jobs just
Right.
so I could paint.
Exactly.
And uh, so the process has been, you know, in a way, like the entrepreneurial
Mhm.
process. It's up and down, up and down. There are some, you know, good years and some, you know, not so good years. And
Mhm.
it's just I think there's such a similarity between entrepreneurs and artists,
Mhm.
that we have a tenacity that can be both plus and minus, right? It's
Mhm.
like, man, my wife has helped me so much with that. Like, Patrick, that's an awesome direction, but nothing is happening in that direction. So maybe pivot over here where something is starting to happen. So there's always benefit from having that assistance from outside
Right.
to redirect our tenacity, so to speak. So I I've pivoted a lot in my personal ideas of art,
Right.
and what I want to pursue.
Mhm.
And and then just, you know, in the last couple of years, I'm tailoring it to audiences.
Yeah.
So I'm experimenting with specific audiences that make sense. That I'm doing a series. I started doing portraits last year. I'd never done portraits.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, my wife had encouraged me for like 25 years to do portraits. And I
Right.
finally like, okay, I'm going to do this. I started and I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to show anybody
Mhm.
this first portrait, because it was not going well.
Right.
But eventually I pulled it off, and it's working now. So the portraits are happening. And I started a series called Brothers in Arms,
Mhm.
celebrating, you know, some of the, like, General Washington. I did a painting of him,
Mhm.
George Washington, uh, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin. I've done those three so far, and there's an audience out there of folks that will love these,
Mhm.
and it's passionate for me. So I guess the point of this long rambling is that we all, no matter, my passion has been art all along, but
Mhm.
it hasn't been easy to match the the numbers of different audiences
Mhm.
to what I'm making, because I've followed my passion
Mhm.
specifically, rather than lots of artists. They figure out what people like and then they start painting that, which is fine. I could never do that. I had to be doing something that was like children do.
Mhm.
They're interested in this,
Yeah.
and, you know, it might, you know, they might be, you know, drawing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something,
Yeah.
or whatever they're watching on TV, or something that they're really into. And they, you can't deviate them from that. You can try to get them to do something. And that's what's so interesting in educational settings, is that how do we use these things that they're super interested in, and incorporate that, rather than trying to get them to
Mhm.
do something completely different, like another language. It, the way education has been teaching is trying to get kids to learn another language about how they learn. And that's so not harmonious. We each have a way we learn, and that's through our play, imagination, and creativity. And it's unique. Aswan, you're unique in how you learn. It is, nobody else does it like you.
Yeah.
And nobody else does it like me. And that's the same for every child. So tuning into how they put the world together makes it so much easier to introduce a social studies or a math project or whatever the project might be. It just it allows the learning to happen more naturally is what is so important. And I've done that in my life through my art. And now, you know, bits and pieces throughout all these decades, learning how to integrate that with the audience or with the selection of people that I think may be interested in this group of art.
Now,
Does
one
that
of
make
the
sense?
things that actually intrigued me about your artwork, actually, and I looked through it before we started recording, was you drew a lot of, I mean, I could see you as a 10-year-old boy kind of in the woods, and you have things kind of working in a way where you're in a forest. And those were things that were true to you and you were able to develop. There's actually an artist out here in West Palm Beach. His name is Harold. He has Skittles, right? He has a bunch of Skittles, and he creates portraits of people using Skittles.
It's amazing.
It's an amazing thing if you see it. I actually met him. I met him directly, put on a show. It's one of the most amazing things you'll ever see. It's crazy to think
I'll
about
look it up.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm bringing this up is because with him, he uses, you know, some like a product, a business like Skittles, and he makes portraits of famous people just using Skittles and stuff like that. If you were to give some advice today to the young artists coming up in this social media fueled world where you get graphic design, you get people that are paying other people for logos, you get a lot of entrepreneurs out there, or freelance business owners out there, whatever it is, where do you take them? What's the first step that you take someone now that the internet's become a place that you can develop as an artist, that the internet's become a place where you can display your art and really can really take off around the world? Like, I mean, Harold, he's traveling 200 days out of the year, just, you know, creating these Skittle portraits and paying. I mean, people are paying him, and I wouldn't even put the number out there, but he's eating pretty well for one.
Sure.
We'll just put it just like that. But in terms of the time and all that it takes to make a photo, it's an excellent piece of work. So what's the first step that you would tell the young artists that are listening in that want to develop in the industry?
Sure. And I think it also applies to the entrepreneurs too, is that, and with the artists, to focus on what you love to do and build the skill and the craft, because those are that I literally focused on skill and craft for 20 years. Part of me was thinking that I was really making some good art. But when I look back, it was mostly just me building my skill level, you know, how to use the brushes, how to mix the paint, how to apply the paint, how to construct a composition, how to know when things aren't right, and how to pivot in the process, deciding when something isn't working, how all the timing is. So the young artist and the young entrepreneur, you have to figure out how to do the basics. Right? We always have to. I come back to the basics every morning. I make a drawing every morning, my morning meditation drawing. Different every morning, pen and ink. This year I'm drawing a circle and a square and making marks inside of them.
Wow.
That's it. That's all. No other rules.
Yeah.
Except for that. And I want to surprise myself. I want to do something that is like, whoa, that's cool. Where'd that come from? I don't know where it comes from, but I want to push myself like that. Young people have to push themselves with respect to craft, with respect to increasing their skill. All of us have the ability to make art. There's generalized creativity and then there's specialized creativity. I think that there's generalized entrepreneurship. I've never said this before, but I just feeling it. And there's specialized entrepreneurship.
Right.
We want to strive for specialized. We do the generalized stuff every day.
Exactly.
You know, little things, how to get to work, how to drive to the grocery store. I don't want to drive that way. I'm going to drive a different way. That's generalized creativity. Specialized creativity is connected to making something unique and powerful and meaningful. So the young artist will get there.
Right.
Keep that in mind, keep that in heart, but practice your skills and practice your craft until you get it, you know it like the back of your hand.
Right.
And then you can expand into something that's personified, or something that's unique, something that's achieving excellence, just like in business.
Exactly. Actually, I heard John Maxwell mention that before, where every day he writes and reads for at least 5 minutes every single day. Every single, I didn't say 50 minutes one day and then no minutes. I said every single day.
Every single day.
It's writing, reading, doing something that is going to perfect your craft. This is all in your control. This is all something you can do. You cannot be looking at your circumstance. You don't have the luxury of looking at something that's not being done and making the excuse. These people, this situation, if you really have a passion and it's really desiring you, I think I heard you say this actually in your TED Talk, is when you as a kid are doing something voluntarily and you just can't wait to get back to it. That's what you got to be focusing on. Catch that.
Exactly.
Parents, for you business owners, for you people that have an authoritative role in this young person's life, pay attention to that. Focus on that. Keep them away from money and stuff like that. I'm so against, I like the idea of young teenagers going out and getting part-time jobs, but I'm against the concept of them feeling like they have to go work for a lot of money too young and getting too into how much they're making too young. I think it's important that you business owners and you parents make sure you focus them on the things they love doing, things that they want to do, that they're passionate about. Get them to focus on that, and it won't feel like work. We'll change, I promise you, we'll change the philosophy, we'll change people's mindset in regards to what work is. I can talk for hours on this, but the mindset about what work is, it should not be a punishment. It should not feel like a punishment to our young people at all. So, all that being said, Patrick, I do want to give you the platform a little bit to talk a little bit about your business, what you're up to now. I'm definitely personally interested in hearing about how you even got on the stage to be a TED speaker, because that's one of the things I'm planning on doing myself. That's one of the bucket list items I have for myself. So, go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about your business, what's next, what can people, if people want to work with you, how can they hear more, all that good stuff.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm splitting time with, as we all do, right? With the Satori Innovation is the business consulting work I'm doing. And that's with either individuals or teams or groups or the whole company, that I can come in, tailor make it to your company, and dive into what creativity is in general, but how we all develop it as children. We're natural at it. It just comes out of us. And then how to reconnect to that. And then I have exercises, both physical and mental and emotional exercises, spiritual exercises, if the group is right and open for that. So that's the entrepreneurial business corporation side. And then I have my art business, which is doing, some of the little paintings back behind me. Those are 1 foot by 1 foot. So from that size to, huge paintings. The Brothers in Arms range from, like 3 feet by 6 or 5 feet to 3 feet by 4 feet. So
now, do you sell them wholesale to museum, or sell them to how does it work? Or do you sell them individually to, like, if somebody just bought a house and they wanted decorations? How does that work?
Right. All the above, basically.
Okay.
So I'm working with a friend out in Colorado that we're exploring some of these more expansive audiences, so to speak, that we can we can package things in a more easily accessible manner. So just selling a painting out of the studio, I choose not to have a gallery right now because of many different reasons. But selling a painting out of my studio is very different than designing a project to go toward a specific audience. So we're building a platform where people can look at the General Washington painting and say, I want a print of that. Okay. And they can easily say what size the print, what kind of frame, just a few clicks, and it's going to be shipped to them, the print. So that's the art business. That's kind of the new direction that I'm exploring for the art business. Okay. And as soon as possible, right? We're always, these projects have lots of ups and downs and twists and turns and such. But that's in a nutshell the two hats in a way that I'm wearing right now. And my wife and I also have a nonprofit that we do. It's an arts and education and healing and research nonprofit. So I have that hat also, and then my life hat, I guess. Doing
well, like I said, you got to tell me too. How did you get on the TEDx?
Yeah. Speaker? So, I had a friend who encouraged me to apply to, and Boulder. We were living in Boulder, and Boulder had Boulder TEDx and TEDx CU, and I applied to Boulder TEDx and didn't get picked, and I applied to Boulder CU, and they picked me to come in for an interview. Great experience because it was all they had faculty supervisors, but it was completely run by the students, which was amazing. They just cranked it. It was amazing. But what's interesting is that I am absolutely comfortable with what we're doing right now. Speaking, extemporaneously, just talking. Right. And I can tell stories, I can, go into background, I can extrapolate into other areas. Right. But the TEDx thing, it's all memorized. So if you have background in memorizing things, piece of cake. Right. If it's a little challenging, then you're going to have to just put in more time in it. And there's all kinds of wacky things that happen during my process of getting ready the day of the talk. Some things happened that was like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it through. And I stumbled around during the talk a little bit, but the editing just takes all that out. So it worked out, but it's fun.
I gotta
do worth
it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So was the application process, was it really rigorous, or was it just a matter of just putting your information out there, right?
Just putting your information out there. And you should have an easy time with having your podcast. And I saw that you hit the top 10 on the host. On Podmatch. That's awesome. Congratulations.
I gotta do. Shout out to Podmatch, man. Alex, you do an incredible job. The show, it has actually revived the guest element to the show, because for the longest time, Pat, I was just a solo episode guy. And then I called another podcast trying to be on their show, and they told me about Podmatch, and I've been addicted to it ever since, because it has revived and brought so many different guests. So shout out to Podmatch and
Alex.
Alex is awesome.
Amazing.
He's actually in Jacksonville, so I gotta link up with him. So
cool.
I haven't actually met him in person yet, but we definitely got to link up at some point. So all that being said, can you just tell people how they can get in touch with you? What's the best way of contacting you? Where do you normally send people if they want to hear more?
Sure. Thank you. The business website is patrickwilliamsstaycreative.com and has tons of information on it, and links to what I've been doing, podcasts, and my TEDx talk is on there. I have 2 art sites, patrickwilliams.com and celebrationflowerpaintings.com, for people who are interested in seeing, and if you want to buy something, just reach out. Patrick Williams, patrick@patrickwilliams.com is my email. I'm happy to answer questions and go over what I do and what I can do for you if you're interested in having me come by your company or your entrepreneurial team.
Mhm.
And I have I have 3 Instagrams. PMW Creativity is where my drawing every day is. And I have 2,700 of those on,
Mhm.
7 years worth. PMW_camera, where I post a photograph every day. There's maybe 1,700 of those, maybe somewhere in there. And then I just started PMW_painting, where I'm posting my process of making paintings.
Cool.
So those 3 spots, and yeah, I love to hear from people. Just shoot me an email. I'd love to chat.
Yeah, I gotta follow those. I mean, whenever something like that comes up on my feed, I'm like stuck because I find it so fascinating with someone and they have like the sped up version of it, and I'm like, I love it. I love that.
It's so much
Not
fun.
a real social media scroller, but whenever I do, every once in a while, I'll see that, and I just can't stop looking at it. It's an amazing thing to me to see. So, all that being said, Patrick, the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are back to being 10 years old. You're the day, go back to the day it actually happened, to where the trees are no longer there. You're going there getting ready to get one, and then all of a sudden the trees are no longer there. Kind of go back to that young boy, pretend he is in this Zoom room now, give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Great. That's intense.
Mhm.
Yeah. Boy,
It's
I would tell him, you're gonna make it. Just keep moving forward. It may look impossible, but
Mhm.
people do impossible things every day.
Amen. Yes.
And you're gonna make it.
You're gonna make it. Then that's sure, that's sweet, that's simple. And again, if you're a first-time listener, I'll tell you the reason I close out the show with that question is because if you are that person, if you are that person listening now, he's talking directly to you. And as promised, as advertised, we're here to just help you get through the moment. We're here to help you get through the moment, to get through the next moment, to get through the next moment. Eventually, you get through enough moments. You have a good day. You have a good day, turns good days into good weeks, good months, good years. Eventually, you're going to have a good life. So, all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.